Śpiewajmy razem!
Three Kings Day. Warsaw, Białystok, Szczecin, Zakopane. The Three Kings processions pass through nearly 1,000 towns and cities in Poland. The tradition of organizing processions is becoming more and more popular every year. The procession passed through the streets of Warsaw for the 18th time. This year's slogan for the event was, "They rejoice in hope."
Tłumy, tłumy I jeszcze raz tłumy.
Crowds and more crowds on Krakowskie Przedmieście Street in Warsaw. Here along the entire route of the Three Kings procession, it's hard to find any free space.
Pierwszy raz.
Is this your first time at the Three Kings procession? No, I think it's my second. Do you like it here? Yes, I do.
Co najbardziej zwróciło twoją uwagę? Który król ci się najbardziej spodobał?
Which king do you like the most? Probably the red one.
Fajnie, jest bardzo fajnie.
It's very nice, but terribly cold. Are you cold? Yes, very. A cup of hot tea would be nice right now.
Dużo było.
There were many different kings, and the theme was the birth of Jesus Christ. This is my first time in Warsaw at such a large Three Kings procession. I cherish traditions. We must bear witness to our faith at every opportunity, and in this way, officially and publicly, which is why I believe that everyone should come and take part in it. Each of the three kings represent a different continent: Europe, Africa, and Asia. The Polish presidential couple took part in the procession, which was met with a very positive reaction from the participants. This is one of our foundations, alongside the beautiful Polish language and our culture, as well as Christian values, which have been with us for over 1,000 years. They are what constitutes our national community. Crowds of faithful could also be seen at the procession in Szczecin. Every Catholic, every person should be here. We are very happy that you are at the Three Kings procession. It always strengthens our faith and warms our hearts that our priests are leading us. The Archbishop was with us. The atmosphere is very family-oriented. Even the youngest ones got involved. We are particularly pleased to see so many families with children. We are showing the value of family in a world where we realize that we are fighting for children and strong families, which is our great concern. Thousands of participants took part in the procession in Kraków. In Białystok, each king was assigned a different color. Despite the freezing temperatures, several thousand people took part in the procession. Wrocław, here, angels on stilts, a dragon straight from Asia, representing the king, or a sage arriving from the Far East. Behind the dragon, Polish knights armed with swords. Our camera also visited the procession in Rymanów-Zdrój. And this is the Holy Trinity Parish in the village of Krzywaczka. After Mass, the procession passed by, accompanied by the Krzywaczka Volunteer Fire Department youth team, and the brass band played. And this is what the procession looked like in the capital of the Tatra Mountains, Zakopane. On January 6th, we celebrate the Feast of the Epiphany in the church. Next to Easter, it is the oldest Christian holiday. However, in the Gospel of St. Matthew, we read not about kings, but about three wise men. They offered the child gold, frankincense, and myrrh, which symbolize the kingship, divinity, and martyrdom of Christ. We know that they came from the East, that is, a foreign culture, and bowed down to the child, expressing that the king of the whole world was born. The names Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar were given to the wise men only in the 9th century. The first letters of their names come from the Latin words Christus mansionem benedicat, which we translate as "May Christ bless this house." That is why we write these three letters on the doors of our homes. The holiday is an opportunity for deeper reflection, following the example of the wise men. We can reflect on who today is the star that leads us to Christ, who brings us closer to Him, or who or what distances us from Him. Since 2011, Three Kings Day has been a public holiday in Poland. Thanks to this, we can use this time not only for spiritual reflection, but also to spend time with our families.
The summit in Paris was preceded by a one-on-one meeting between Emmanuel Macron and Volodymyr Zelensky. Russia does not stop its strikes against our country. And right now, we need to bolster air defense to protect our people, our communities, and critical infrastructure. France is emerging as Ukraine's main ally in Europe, and President Emmanuel Macron is more interested in foreign policy than domestic policy, where one crisis follows another. He announced today's meeting a few days ago in his New Year's address to the French people. Many European countries and their allies will make specific commitments to protect Ukraine and ensure a just and lasting peace on our European continent. France and the UK, which lead the so-called Coalition of the Willing, a group of countries supporting Ukraine, are ready to send their troops to Ukraine in the event of peace, without consulting other EU or UN countries. They have also decided to set up a coordination unit at the coalition headquarters in Paris. The Coalition of the Willing is also to have other very specific commitments in the event of peace between Ukraine and Russia. These commitments may include the use of military capabilities, intelligence and logistical support, diplomatic initiatives, and the adoption of additional sanctions. The lead-up to today's meeting in Paris featured a conversation between the presidents of the United States and Ukraine, just before the New Year in Florida, after which both sides spoke of a clear rapprochement of positions that would give a chance for peace.
So a lot of good things came out of that call today, but they were in the works for 2 weeks with Steve and with Jared and Marco and everybody.
President Trump's envoys involved in the peace talks, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, are in Paris today. This is the first time they have participated in the talks of the so-called Coalition of the Willing, and a clear sign of a rapprochement in positions in recent weeks. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk was also present in Paris. Even before his departure, he admitted he knew very little about the key elements of the peace plan. We will also discuss certain elements of these future documents of the 20-point peace plan. Until now, this document has been kept in fairly deep secrecy. We've based our knowledge on leaks and speculation. Donald Tusk has not been being invited to the talks on peace in Ukraine organized by the United States or by the Coalition of the Willing, which is organized in a small circle and regularly attended by Germany, France, and the United Kingdom. Nicolas Maduro is in handcuffs and his drug cartel is in ruins. The dictator faces 4 charges, including narco-terrorism and possession of weapons that could be used against the United States. His wife, who was actively involved in criminal activities, is also being charged. The charges are substantial and specific, and he will be tried strictly according to U.S. law, combined with the fact that the U.S. administration's pressure on Venezuela is not being lifted. Sanctions on Venezuelan oil will continue so the regime is not financed or influenced by China, Russia, or Iran, whose goal is to destabilize the U.S. On the first day of the trial in Manhattan, New York, Maduro looked terrified, as did his wife. He was brought in wearing prison clothes and headphones so he could hear the charges translated into Spanish. When he realized how serious the charges were, he said he was innocent and felt like a prisoner of war. Someone in the courtroom shouted at him to pay for his crimes.
He's a violent guy, and he's killed millions of people. He's tortured. They have a torture chamber in the middle of Caracas that they were closing up. But he's tortured people and...
The next hearing of the dictator and his wife is scheduled for March 17th. The illegal Marxist regime of self-proclaimed President Maduro in Venezuela has cooperated very closely with China, Iran, and Cuba. These countries' reputation precedes them. Chinese presence in Venezuela in particular has been a cause for concern for the United States for a very practical reason. The presence of Chinese bombers or missiles would mean the Chinese would have potential to directly strike U.S. territory, especially Texas, where about 40% of the U.S.'s oil is located. We also know more and more details about the daring operation carried out by American commandos and other special forces. When the lights went out in the Venezuelan capital of Caracas, the U.S. Army launched its attack. Fighter jets, helicopters, and aircraft carriers were deployed. A simultaneous strike from land, air, and sea.
In downtown Caracas in Venezuela, as nearly 200 of our greatest Americans went downtown in Caracas. Seems those Russian air defenses didn't quite work so well, did they? Downtown Caracas grabbed an indicted individual wanted by American justice in support of law enforcement without a single American killed.
The USA showed its strength by overthrowing a criminal regime and bringing down a drug lord, who was also dictator of Venezuela. The Americans have shown us how to fight the drug trade, especially the organized crime aspect. It doesn't matter whether it is run by a simple criminal or an important politician. This is how this type of crime should be fought. Maduro created a network of connections with cartels and criminals from Colombia and Mexico. He created new drug supply routes to the United States, and his cartel of the Suns operated ruthlessly to maximize profits. Government planes and boats were used to transport the deadly cargo to America. As de facto head of state, he allowed drugs to be shipped from Venezuela to the United States, flooding the streets of the United States with cheap cocaine, as well as fentanyl, which was produced with China and shipped through Venezuela to the United States. So this is very good news for Americans, for American families, and above all for American youth, who lost their lives and health to these drugs. The collapse of Maduro's drug business is a relief above all for ordinary people who are victims of criminal activity. Maduro's family, government officials, and the military have been robbing their citizens for over a decade. Now, things can finally change. After 27 years of waiting for this moment, Venezuela has finally achieved freedom. The world saw what Maduro did to us, what chaos he caused on the continent, that 9 million Venezuelans fled in search of bread. This moment is one of joy for us. Venezuelans living all over the world are celebrating, but those living in Venezuela cannot celebrate yet because the oppressive regime is still hanging on there. Maduro's capture by itself does not mean the end of the Venezuelan regime. His right-hand woman, Delcy Rodriguez, has declared herself the new president of the country. During the night in Caracas, near the Miraflores presidential palace, machine gun fire could be heard. It is difficult to determine exactly what is happening in Venezuela, but chaos still reigns there. Donald Trump said that democratic elections in that country will not take place within the next month. First, the situation there must be brought under control.
On New Year's Eve, a fire broke out at the La Constellation bar in the Swiss ski resort of Crans-Montana, killing more than 40 people and injuring 121. Sparklers placed in champagne bottles were the source of the flames. The Swiss media are revealing further negligence. No periodic inspections were carried out between 2020 and 2025. The City Council learned of this situation after reviewing documents filed with the prosecutor's office last weekend. The Valais Regional Prosecutor's Office has launched an investigation into the bar's managers. They are suspected of involuntary manslaughter, involuntary bodily harm, and involuntary arson. Given the circumstances, we immediately commissioned a specialized external company to inspect 128 public buildings in our municipality as quickly as possible. As part of this commission, the municipality will also commission an inspection of the materials, even though this is not required by law. The owners removed photos of the renovation work at the La Constellation bar from the internet, but Blick journalists obtained several photos from 2015. They show that the stairs from the bar in the basement to the ground floor had been narrowed. In turn, the soundproof ceiling panels, which were the first to catch fire, may have been made of flammable materials. Now we have to pray, but sooner or later, we have to find out who failed, because when you watch the footage, you can see that the fire ignites immediately. This is not normal. If everything had been up to standard, such a tragedy should not have happened. We need to find out what happened and why. We need to be 100% sure that this is the case. We can't speculate by saying, we think this or that. An accident is always the result of several things that went wrong, and this cannot happen again. Investigators have completed the identification of 40 victims and all the injured. It is not known exactly how many people were in La Constelación at the time of the fire, and investigators say it may never be determined. Meanwhile, on the snow-covered slopes of Crown Montana, on the initiative of the ski school, around 1,000 people formed a heart to commemorate the victims of the deadly fire.